Finally, when we got through it, Jesus said, "Do you have any questions?" I said, "I got a million questions." He said, "What do you want to know?" So I asked him everything that I could think of to know. And if we went through that, it would take us several years. And he gave me a whole new understanding of everything. I said, "Great. Now that I understand, I want to go to heaven." He said, "I'm not ready for heaven yet." Finally, I said, "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to love the person that you're with." I said, "Okay, yeah, but then what do you want me to do after I do that?" And he said, "No, that's what I want you to do." And I said, "What good's that going to do?" And he said, "It's going to change the world."
What if Elon Musk, the man pushing humanity toward Mars and revolutionizing the future, discovered a hidden truth about life even more transformative than technology? This story is about a man who, much like Musk, faced the impossible. But instead of exploring the cosmos, he ventured beyond life itself and came back with a message that could change the world, a story of ambition, love, and the ripple effect of small actions that mirror the legacy Musk envisions for humanity. What he learned may just redefine what it means to truly make an impact. Life seemed to unfold perfectly for the protagonist. At just 25 years old, he achieved what many could only dream of: a position as an assistant professor at Northern Kentucky University. Within a short span of time, his dedication and intellect earned him not only tenure, but also a promotion to full professor. This rapid rise in academia was a testament to his exceptional abilities and unrelenting drive to succeed. His personal life mirrored his professional success. Married to his supportive wife, he found joy in their shared experiences and adventures. Together, they embarked on a memorable art tour across Europe, immersing themselves in the rich cultural and historical tapestry of the continent. The trip took them through Denmark, Sweden, and finally to Paris, where they spent an entire week exploring the city's famed museums and galleries. From the Louvre's timeless masterpieces to the vibrant streets of Montmartre, every moment felt like a celebration of a life's beauty and potential. However, the seemingly idyllic journey took a sudden and jarring turn. On the morning of June 1st, 1985, as the couple prepared for another day of exploration in Paris, an intense, searing pain erupted in the protagonist's abdomen. The pain was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a blinding, fiery agony that seemed to engulf his entire being. His mind raced with confusion and terror. Where had this come from? What could be causing such unbearable suffering? His wife, alarmed and desperate, called for help as he collapsed to the floor, immobilized by the pain. Within minutes, a doctor arrived and quickly diagnosed the issue: a perforation in his small intestine, a life-threatening condition that required immediate surgery. The gravity of the situation hit like a tidal wave. The protagonist was digesting himself from the inside out, and unless he was operated on within the next hour, he would die. A race against time began. His wife accompanied him in the ambulance as it sped through the bustling streets of Paris. The urgency of the moment was palpable, every second stretching into eternity as they navigated the chaotic city. Yet, the nightmare intensified upon their arrival at the hospital. It was the weekend, and no surgeon was available to perform the life-saving procedure. The protagonist was admitted but left in agonizing limbo, his condition worsening with each passing moment. For hours, he begged and pleaded for help. His wife's cries echoed in the sterile hospital room, but no one came to their aid. Nurses would occasionally check on him, their indifferent shrugs offering no solace. As the clock ticked on, a chilling realization dawned. He was on the brink of death, and no one seemed able or willing to save him. By the end of the day, his body was failing. The once vibrant, ambitious professor now lay on the cold hospital bed, exhausted and resigned. His wife wept beside him, her tears a testament to their shared helplessness. As his vision blurred and darkness began to creep in, he thought to himself, "This can't be happening. This can't be the end." The pain was unbearable, like fire consuming him from within. A doctor diagnosed a perforated intestine and warned that he would die without immediate surgery. Rushed through Paris in an ambulance, hope turned to despair when the hospital revealed no surgeons were available due to the weekend. Hours passed in agony. Nurses came and went, offering no solutions, while his wife begged for help. Exhausted and defeated, he repeated in his mind, "This can't be happening." By nightfall, a nurse admitted that no doctor would come until morning. Overwhelmed, he closed his eyes and stopped fighting to breathe, expecting death to be the end. But instead of nothingness, he awoke standing beside his body, feeling more alive than ever. His senses were heightened, but his wife couldn't hear his desperate calls. Then, shadowy figures appeared in the hallway, beckoning him to follow. Believing they were hospital staff, he stepped into the darkness, unaware of the terrifying journey ahead. The protagonist found himself standing outside his body, feeling more alive than ever. His senses were heightened. He could see everything with perfect clarity, hear even the faintest sounds, and feel the cool hospital floor beneath his feet. It was a surreal, almost overwhelming experience. The lifeless figure on the bed bore a striking resemblance to him, but he couldn't understand how it could be him when he felt so vibrant. His wife sat beside the bed weeping, but she didn't respond to his calls. He shouted louder, but it was as if he didn't exist. Frustration turned into confusion. How could she not see him? He was right there. Then he noticed movements in the hallway. Figures stood in the shadows, just beyond the light spilling from his room. They called to him. "It's time to come with us," one of them said. Their voices were firm but calm, leaving no room for argument. Believing they were hospital staff, he asked for a doctor. They assured him they knew what he needed and urged him to follow. Reluctantly, he stepped out of the light-filled room and into the dim hallway. The moment he crossed the threshold, he knew he couldn't go back. It wasn't a physical barrier, but something deeper. The figures surrounded him and began leading him forward. Their voices became impatient. "Hurry up. We've waited long enough." The hallway stretched endlessly. There were no walls, no doors, no ceilings, just an infinite, dark void. They walked for what felt like miles, but the scenery never changed. Doubt began to creep in. "This isn't a hospital," he said. "Where are we?" Their response was sharp. "Be quiet. Keep moving." As they walked deeper into the void, the figure's demeanor shifted. Their calm voices turned cold, then cruel. The darkness around them felt suffocating, and a sense of dread settled in his chest. He realized he wasn't being taken to safety. He was being led somewhere far worse. As the protagonist followed the shadowy figures deeper into the void, fear gripped him. The hallway stretched endlessly, with no walls, no doors, just a suffocating darkness that seemed to swallow everything. The figures that had once spoken calmly grew impatient, their voices sharp and menacing. "Hurry up!" they barked, shoving him forward. Confusion turned into dread as he realized he wasn't being led to safety, but somewhere far more sinister. The darkness pressed in, amplifying the feeling of isolation. Voices began to echo around him, mocking, vulgar, and cruel. It was as though he had entered a realm of despair, where hope did not exist. The figures became more aggressive, pushing and pulling him with brutal force. They struck him, tore at his flesh, and reveled in his suffering. The pain was both physical and emotional, a reflection of the worst moments of his life. In that moment of despair, the protagonist thought about his life, the ambition, the drive, the achievements he had pursued at all costs. He realized that despite his success, he had left behind broken relationships, neglected loved ones, and a legacy of pain. His life had been consumed by self-interest, and now he faced the consequences of those choices. Yet, in the darkest moment, a thought struck him. What if this wasn't the end? What if there was a way out? It was a question that reminded him of a spark of hope he had once known as a child, singing "Jesus Loves Me" in Sunday school. He cried out into the void, calling for Jesus, his voice weak but filled with desperation. Suddenly, a tiny light appeared in the overwhelming darkness. A star, faint at first, but growing brighter and closer with every moment. The light brought warmth, peace, and an unshakable sense of love. The shadowy figures recoiled, their taunts silenced by the radiance. The protagonist felt the presence of something far greater than himself, Jesus. This moment connects profoundly to Elon Musk's philosophy of pushing through the impossible. Just as Musk envisions humanity breaking through barriers to explore the vast unknown of space, the protagonist found himself pushing beyond the limits of despair and darkness to discover a new reality. Both journeys reflect the idea that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit, and in this case, divine love, can break through and transform everything. As the light surrounded him, Jesus' voice spoke clearly and directly to the protagonist. You are not alone. In that instant, he realized that just as Musk's vision of exploring the stars offers hope for humanity's future, the light he encountered was the ultimate hope, a love so powerful that it could change the course of his life and ripple out to transform the world. Bathed in the warm, radiant light, the protagonist felt a peace he had never known. The despair that had consumed him just moments before melted away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of love and safety. He was no longer in the void, but in a space that seemed to transcend physical reality, a realm of light and calm. Jesus' presence was undeniable. Though he did not speak aloud, his words resonated deeply within the protagonist's mind. You are not forgotten, the voice said. It was telepathic, yet it felt personal, intimate, as if it was meant only for him. The weight of those words brought tears to his eyes. For the first time in his life, he felt truly seen and loved. Then Jesus spoke again, this time with purpose. I have people who want to show you something, he said. Before the protagonist could respond, the light around him shifted, and he was suddenly surrounded by what felt like a heavenly council, beings that radiated kindness, wisdom, and understanding. Their presence was soothing, yet he sensed they carried an important mission. They told him they would show him his life, and as they began, the memories unfolded before him like a vivid movie. Every moment, every decision, every word he had ever spoken played out in extraordinary detail. At first, he saw the joy and innocence of his childhood. He smiled at the happy moments, playing with friends, learning new things, and the simple, pure love of his early years. But then, the memories grew darker. He watched as his adolescence brought rebellion, bitterness, and a growing rift between him and his father. He saw how his father's harsh treatment hardened his heart, and how, in his pain, he began to treat others poorly. As his career progressed, he saw how his ambition often came at the expense of his relationships. He had neglected his wife, distanced himself from his children, and pursued success over connection. The council showed him not just his actions, but their ripple effects. He saw the hurt he had caused, not just to those closest to him, but to others he had barely noticed. Students, colleagues, even strangers. Every selfish choice, every harsh word, and every missed opportunity to show kindness was laid bare. The pain of these revelations was almost unbearable. He turned to Jesus, who stood nearby, and saw deep sadness in his eyes. Not condemnation, but sorrow for the harm the protagonist had inflicted and for the opportunities he had missed to love and uplift others. It was a profound and humbling moment. Yet, even in the face of this stark truth, Jesus' presence radiated compassion. You are loved, he said, and there is still hope. The words pierced through the protagonist's shame, igniting a spark of possibility. He realized that this was not a punishment, but a chance for redemption, a chance to understand, to grow, and to change. When the life review ended, the beings looked at him with gentle expectation. Jesus asked, "Do you have questions?" The protagonist hesitated, overwhelmed by the enormity of what he had just experienced. But one question burned brighter than the rest. "What do I do now?" Jesus smiled, his warmth filling the space. "Love," he said. "Love the person you are with. Start there." The simplicity of the command puzzled him. "That's it?" he asked. "How can that make a difference in a world so broken?" Jesus' reply was firm yet kind. Love grows. It changes the world, one person at a time. Trust in this. Though the protagonist struggled to grasp the full weight of these words, he sensed their truth. It wasn't about grand gestures or monumental achievements. It was about the everyday acts of love and kindness that could ripple outward, transforming the lives they touched. The light around him began to fade, and he felt himself being drawn back to his body. Panic flashed through him. "I don't want to leave," he said. But Jesus' voice reassured him. "You have a purpose. Go back and live it." With a jolt, the protagonist found himself back in his body. The cold, sterile hospital room came into focus, and the searing pain in his abdomen returned. A nurse rushed in, announcing that a doctor had finally arrived, and preparations for emergency surgery began. But something within him had irrevocably changed. Though physically weak, he felt an incredible clarity of purpose. The memories of what had just happened, the light, the life review, the words of Jesus, were as vivid as if they had happened moments ago. He knew that this experience was not just real, but the most important moment of his life. As he lay waiting to be wheeled into surgery, his wife stood beside him, her face etched with worry. He looked at her, tears filling his eyes, and said, "It's all love." She paused, confused. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I mean everything," he replied. "The life, God, United States. It's all about love." His words didn't seem to register. She chalked it up to the delirium of his condition, urging him to rest. But to him, the message was clear and unshakable. The overwhelming love he had felt during his experience wasn't something he could keep to himself. He had to share it. The surgery was a success, but his recovery was slow and grueling. During those weeks, he struggled with how to communicate the depth of his experience. How could he explain something so profound to people who hadn't seen or felt what he had? How could he make them understand the urgency of love, forgiveness, and kindness? He started with his wife, but his newfound zeal overwhelmed her. His attempts to convey the truths he had learned often came across as disjointed, even fanatical. "You don't understand," he would insist. "It's all real, everything I saw, everything I felt." But the more he tried to explain, the more distant she became. The same pattern repeated with others. Friends, colleagues, and even his children began to avoid him, unable to reconcile the man they once knew with the one who now spoke so passionately about God, love, and the afterlife. To them, he seemed like a man who had lost touch with reality. His marriage began to falter. His wife, once his closest confidant, could no longer handle the person he had become. The more he pushed to share his experience, the more she pulled away. Eventually, she left, taking their children with her. The pain of their departure was a heavy burden, but he clung to the hope that one day they might understand. Despite the loneliness and rejection, he refused to give up. He began reaching out to strangers, sharing his story with anyone who would listen. Sometimes, his words fell on deaf ears. Other times, they planted seeds of curiosity and hope. He met people who, like him, had faced their own crises of faith and found comfort in his testimony. Through it all, the message remained the same: love. It wasn't just a word or a feeling. It was an action, a choice, a way of life. He began to embody it in small, simple ways, forgiving those who hurt him, offering kindness to strangers, and finding beauty in the ordinary. Slowly, he began to see the ripple effect Jesus had spoken of. Acts of love, no matter how small, had the power to change the world. Returning to his body, the protagonist knew his life had changed forever. Though weak from surgery, he was determined to live by the lesson he had learned, to love. He started by reconciling with his father, forgiving years of pain and building a bond that had once seemed impossible. Because he's my dad, he explained simply. Reaching out to his estranged children, he showed quiet persistence and kindness. Gradually, they began to see the change in him. His acts of love extended to strangers as he shared his story, helping others find hope and healing through simple, selfless gestures. Though many doubted him and his relationships were tested, he held on to Jesus' words, "Love the person you are with." Slowly but surely, his life became a reflection of that love, transforming not only himself, but those around him. In his later years, surrounded by family and peace, he saw the ripple effect of love. What started as a small personal mission grew into something larger, proving Jesus' words true. Love could indeed change the world.